The workbench. For centuries, it's been the most important tool in a craftsman's workshop. Today, it's still the most important tool in my workshop. I built my first workbench for using hand tools 25 years ago using 2x4 construction lumber from the home center. Since that first workbench, I've built a hardwood, continental European style workbench with a laminated birch top, trestle style base, and a traditional tail vise. I've built an English style bench with a twin screw vise and a wide pierced front apron. And I built a French style bench with a thick, solid top, a leg vise, and big, beefy legs. All of these workbenches were very good benches for handwork, and each one of them could have been the last workbench I ever built. Over the last 25 years, I've built close to 100 projects using those 4 workbenches, and while each of the benches had its pros and cons, I was able to easily adapt to each of their minor quirks to the point that using the workbench became second nature. However, I was never 100% satisfied with any of these designs, so I've gone and built yet another workbench, my 5th if you're counting. This latest workbench is based on what is probably the most iconic workbench ever built, the large shaker workbench from the Hancock Shaker Village Museum in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I didn't film the process of building the workbench because it's just too big, and I worked on it off and on over a period of about 12 months. In addition, I probably have somewhere between 120 and 150 hours of build time in the bench, and filming the process would have easily tripled the amount of time that it took to build it. And I didn't want to spend over 400 hours filming, building, and editing just to condense the whole thing down into a 10-minute video that the YouTube algorithm probably won't show to anyone anyway. So rather than being a build video, this video will just be a walkthrough of the workbench's design and features. As I just mentioned, the design is based on the iconic shaker bench from the Workbench book by Scott Landis. The original has a top that's 12 feet long and 36 inches wide. I scaled mine down slightly, but it's still a beast of a workbench with a top that's 10 feet long and 30 inches wide. The base is made mostly from white pine logs and beams left over from building our log home, with a bit of poplar thrown in as well. The base measures 8 feet long and 24 inches deep, and stands approximately 32 inches high without the bench top attached. Legs on the tail vise end are approximately 3.5 inches square. The legs on the leg vise end are approximately 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches. The ends in front of the base are all frame and panel construction with solid white pine panels. The vertical partitions that divide the drawer bays and cabinet are also frame and panel construction. The top is constructed of solid ash, with the main field glued up from 3 flat sawn boards that are hair over 2 inches thick. The aprons, dog hole strip, and end caps are all 4 inches thick, and the end caps are affixed with barrel nuts and bolts. The vise hardware is the bench-crafted classic leg vise with crisscross and the bench-crafted classic tail vise. The leg vise is a 2-piece construction. The rear jaw is sugar maple that is glued to the pine front leg of the bench and has a tenon that extends through the top of the bench. The vise chop is ash. The planing stop block is also ash, and the tooth planing stop is also from bench-crafted. The 8 drawers are all about 24 inches wide and 22 inches deep and graduate in height from top to bottom. The drawer boxes are constructed of solid yellow pine with hand-cut dovetails and 1/2-inch plywood bottoms. The drawer pulls are turned from white oak. All drawers ride on Bloom full extension undermount slides. The cabinet doors are frame and panel hung on solid brass hinges and secured with a wooden latch. The cabinet door opening is approximately 36 inches wide with about 42 inches of interior cabinet width. One feature of the Shaker original that I didn't include on my workbench was a sliding deadman. However, I did proactively plow a groove in the bottom of the front apron just in case I decide to add this feature later. The workbench base is finished following 3 different schedules. The panels, drawer fronts, and doors are painted with deep sapphire milk paint topped with a water-based clear coat. The exterior pine surfaces are stained, sealed with garnet shellac, glazed with a brown mahogany gel stain, and topped with a water-based clear coat. Interior surfaces are left natural and sealed with a water-based clear coat. The top, vice chop, planing stop block, tail vice block, and bench dogs are finished with 2 coats of a mix of linseed oil, varnish, and mineral spirits. At this point, I haven't quite finished organizing the cabinet and all of the drawers, but here's a look at what's been done so far. As you can see, this top drawer is basically drawing and rough marking supplies. These dividers are 1/4 inch thick, half-lapped pine strips, and nothing is glued in. It's all in here loose, so that I can fairly easily reconfigure this if I decide to do so. And underneath the dividers, the drawer is lined with just a regular old vinyl drawer liner from, Walmart or wherever. So this next drawer down is all of my chisels and gouges. The racks are all, once again, half-lapped pine with cutouts for the chisel handles, you can see here. In the back of the drawer, I have the mortise chisels and in-cannel and out-cannel gouges. So the third drawer down is shaping and hand sanding tools. So this is a sliding till. I can actually store the sandpaper for the sanding blocks underneath the till. I keep a supply of sandpaper from 100 grit through 400 grit, and it's all pre-cut to fit the sanding blocks. And then I also have rasps and scrapers, spoke shaves, and my cabinet scraper in here. So in the bottom drawer, I currently have braces and brace bits and a hand drill, but I haven't really done anything to organize this drawer yet, as you can see. So everything's just kind of thrown in there for the time being. So moving over to the right bank of drawers, in the top drawer, I have my measuring and marking tools. I French fit them into the drawer to keep them from all banging into each other and keep them organized. This panel down here is just it's a piece of mystery wood that I found out in our barn. I think it's Luan mahogany. The fitting was pretty easy. It was done, just by tracing the tools once I had the layout that I liked. And then I routed the pockets, sometimes with a fence on the router. Sometimes I just routed them freehand to remove the bulk of the waste. And then I just used chisels and gouges to clean up the outsides, just to get everything, nice and straight. So it wasn't difficult work, it was just a little time consuming. So the next drawer down on the right has hammers and letter stamps. There's really no organization to this drawer. As you can see, everything's just kind of stacked in there right now, but there's nothing to keep stuff from banging around. So at some point I'll come up with some type of organization and maybe put some more stuff in here. So this third drawer down has fasteners and a doweling jig. I still need to finish up the bins and organizers for this drawer. I haven't really decided what to do on this side for the screws and this other junk yet, but I've got individual bins for dowel pins, and the nails are in individual bins so that they can be taken out and taken over to the project. So a little bit more to finish up in this drawer. And finally at the bottom, this is all just specialized tools for chair making and hammer veneering, and there's some carving knives in there and a V tool. It's really not organized at all at the moment. Everything's just kind of thrown in there. Again, there may end up being more stuff that gets put in this drawer, so I'll organize it at some point once I know everything that's going in here. So inside the cabinet, it's just kind of a mess of appliances at the moment. There's some shooting boards in there, some bench hooks and other jigs and fixtures. I've got some blankets in here that I use when I'm handling assembled pieces. There's a silicone glue mat at the back. I need to put a shelf or two inside here and better organize this space, but I haven't really decided on how I want to lay it out just yet. So I'll see how I end up using the space and what I end up storing in here long term, and then design something that'll fit those things. So I know there's a whole bunch of you watching out there right now who are wondering why I went and built yet another workbench when I said earlier that there was really nothing wrong with the previous workbenches. Well, after working extensively with hand tools over the last 25 years on numerous different workbenches, I do have some thoughts. And you can agree or disagree, it's really not important. These are just my opinions. The truth is, there is no such thing as a perfect workbench. No matter what you may read in a book or a magazine or watch on YouTube, every workbench design has its pros and cons. But while the perfect workbench may not exist, what I've found after working with all these different workbench styles over the past 2.5 decades is that they all work just fine. If you want to get anything done, you learn to exploit a bench's strengths, adapt to its weaknesses, and you just build stuff. So if you're aspiring to build a workbench, don't overthink it. Take all the advice that you read about and watch on YouTube, including mine, with a big pinch of salt. Then build whatever style workbench appeals to your own sensibilities. Over time, you'll learn to work with whatever style workbench you have. Okay, so I still haven't answered the question as to why I built this new workbench and retired my other ones. Well, my English style bench just plain wore out. After 15 years of almost daily use, it just wasn't working well for me anymore. The holdfast holes were all wallowed out and the holdfast just wouldn't grip anymore. The wooden vise screws warped, so the vise wouldn't work properly. And I really grew tired of all the dust and plane shavings that would fall through the holdfast holes and the gap that was between the top boards all over the tools and appliances that were on the shelf underneath. And I also grew really tired of all the dust and plane shavings that would find their way onto the floor underneath the workbench. As for the French style workbench, it was just too small for the way I work and the things that I build. The top of that bench was only 6 feet long by 18 inches deep. And anytime I would build chairs or large case pieces, things would kind of fall off the back edge of the bench. The French bench also had the same problem as the English bench, with dust and plane shavings accumulating on the shelf and floor underneath the bench. But the short answer to the question as to why I retired those two benches and built a shaker bench is that I just wanted to build a shaker bench. I have been enamored with the Hancock Shaker bench ever since the first time I saw it, and I've wanted to build one for 25 years. So I decided it was finally time to build it. I know that may not be the answer some of you wanted to hear, and perhaps you were looking for some kind of insightful, well thought out, logical reason why this bench was so much better than the other ones. Sorry to disappoint you, but it's not any better. It's just different. I'll adapt to this bench's idiosyncrasies the same as I have every other bench I've built and used. And the furniture I build on this bench won't be any better or worse than the furniture I've built on any of the other benches I've used, at least not because of the workbench. But with this new workbench that I've dreamed about building for 25 years now a reality, I might enjoy building more. And that's really what continues to drive me to make things. So I hope you enjoyed this little tour through the new workbench and maybe even picked up a few ideas for your own workbench build. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.